Now we'll analyze more of the issue, the latest from Gaza and Israel, with our guests. So let us introduce those joining us now for this conversation.
And they are James Bowden, Middle East expert, and Amir Whiteman, head of the Libertarian Caucus in the Likud. Good evening and welcome to TVP World to you both.
Good evening.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So now the first question I have, and let's start with you, James. So Hamas has recently released a video of Israeli-American hostage Hersh Goldberg Polin. My question is, why have they done this now?
I believe that it's meant to destabilize the Netanyahu government and likely attempt to draw away from or attempt to blunt the Rafah operation. I believe that what they're attempting to do is to stir up a lot of controversy and remind Israeli citizens that these hostages still have not been recovered, that they're likely still in Rafah, and that there is the possibility that they would be killed in an operation in that area. And so we have already seen protests become renewed and get even stronger outside of the Prime Minister's residence overnight since the release of this video. So it really is meant to disrupt and destabilize. And I think that it might be a little bit, too little too late to do so, because we're already seeing indications that Israel is going to go into Rafah very soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what about you, Amir, in terms of this provocative video, really? I mean, it doesn't help the negotiations, it doesn't help this at all, does it? And I think also with what we're seeing, angry families protesting around Israel. So how is this video and how's the reaction there on the ground from the Israeli side?
No, first of all, I think that I agree with my colleague here on the panel. But if I may just add, I think one point is that the Hamas is a little bit panicked. I think they understand that the Rafah operation is going to start very soon. We don't know exactly when, of course, but it's probably a question of days or probably no more than a couple of weeks away. And they understand it's serious, and they understand that Israel has prepared carefully for this operation. And after that, it's pretty much the end for the Hamas as a military organization. Doesn't mean, of course, that there's not going to be more Hamas terrorists all over the place, because there are plenty more all around the Gaza Strip. But as a military organization, this is probably going to be the end, and they are panicked. And they also understand that the Hamas leadership, which is there, like Yahya Sinwar and others, they understand that this may be their personal end, that they're going to be killed. And therefore, they're trying everything they can do at this point to try to make this operation not happen. And this is psychological war. So, I think we shouldn't fall into this trap.
So now, since we are still talking about the hostages, I wanted to ask James, what do we know? How many more people are still in Hamas captivity? Do we have any signs of life, besides, of course, the video that we have seen recently? And when will we see the rest of them come home?
That's a very good question. I have constant discussions about both of those topics with colleagues here in the United States. And I believe that there are still about 8 Israeli Americans in captivity. And I've seen, I believe, the number of somewhere around 140 hostages still remaining in Gaza. I think that a lot more work needs to be done, and I look forward to when the hostages will be released. But there's also some questions about whether they are still in Gaza itself. Some people have speculated that some of them have been transferred outside of it.
Mm-hmm. I'm also curious about the scale of this, because Amir, you said that that Hamas can basically feel that this end is coming, that this Rafah operation may well prove to be the end of the military arm of Hamas. But you said it doesn't ensure the end of Hamas? We've seen also, of course, strikes into Lebanon. We've seen, of course, some other strikes around the region. So what does this potential, I mean, could we imagine that this is the end? Will all these strikes stop? Is there an end game? Does Netanyahu have a plan? I know we're in the thick of this, but what does this look like if Rafah continues and the operation goes ahead? What does the end look like in your mind?
Well, first of all, just to come back to your previous question, because I've got some data. So there are just over 130 hostages left in the Gaza Strip. That we don't have the precise numbers, of course, but the expectation is that some, roughly half of them, maybe a little bit more than that, are dead. And we are talking about probably anywhere between 50 and 60 hostages alive, more or less, of course. We don't know exactly, but this is the estimation, right? Now, in terms of the operation, the end game, well, the question is what happens in the Gaza Strip after the Rafah operation. The reality is that the world is not letting Israel win, as usual, unfortunately. The situation there is not going to be good even after the operation. There's going to be, I would say, lower level warfare for a long time. I don't know how long, but it's going to take years because, again, yes, we will have by then dismantled most of the military abilities of the Hamas, but you have to realize there's still going to be a good few thousand terrorists still there. The Hamas
and also, Amir, I mean, let's be blunt. You'll also have over 2 million Palestinians and Gazans still in that who are on the verge of, in some estimation, already starving. So that's also something to deal with after the dust settles.
Well, of course, no, they're not starving, by the way. Yeah, this was Hamas propaganda, essentially aided by the UN. But that's not the
but I think that is a statement we have to very cautiously say, that I think that there is a serious, I think it's not just the United Nations, but I think that there is a serious issue of people and children not receiving the kind of basic necessities that they need, and that is very much something that I think internationally is accepted. I think disputing that there is no suffering in Gaza, I'm afraid, is not what's happening.
That is not, I'm not disputing the fact that there's suffering. There is a lot of suffering, but that is not the word you used. You said starving. Starving is not suffering. Suffering there is plenty of. It's nobody. There's discussion about that.
Right. Starving, so let's get James.
That's not the main point. The point is, at the end of the day, we don't know the precise numbers of Palestinians there. We're expecting 1.6, 1.7 million, let's say. It's a large number of people, and these people, most of them are essentially in favor of Hamas, or certainly in favor of Hamas's policies. So that creates a huge challenge, and I think that the right thing to do is what has been done for every single population in this state of affairs in the whole world, which is to help them rebuild their lives somewhere where they are going to be able to actually do it properly. I'm not convinced the Gaza Strip is the best place for this to happen.
Right. Well, I think that in itself is already a very, very intense debate. We have to have another time. I see you also reacting to this, James. What's your view on this kind of questioning? Also, I think when I mentioned starvation, what's your view on that?
Well, my view is that they're definitely starving. I mean, we know, and we have had reports from the very beginning of this conflict that Hamas has been siphoning off resources, food resources, as they come in, putting them in tunnels, putting them in warehouses, distributing them, and keeping them from the general population. And we've also seen Israel allow just common, maybe one or two, or maybe like 50 protesters block aid shipments into the Gaza Strip, and they kind of throw up their hands and say, well, we've got some people protesting, so we can't really, get around them. There is definitely starving. There is definite suffering there. The human toll and the human casualty that is going on in the Gaza Strip is almost unconscionable. And I don't think that that's a matter for debate.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, I have a question as recently, this time for you, Amir. So, Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, he has been trying to get other of his allies to prepare for the recognition of Palestine. And he's always believed that the ideal situation would be for Western countries like Spain to recognize Palestine and for Arab countries to do the same when it comes to Israel. So far, we've only had Jordan and Egypt do that. When can we see something like this and under what conditions?
Well, concerning Pedro Sanchez, I think he will have to reflect over the next few days about his own personal corruption issues, and we certainly hope that he leaves public life next week. But beyond his personal issues and more regarding the ideas you've been talking about now, well, listen, frankly, I think that unilaterally recognizing now a Palestinian state after the 7th of October is essentially giving a prize to terrorism. It is telling the world, it is telling Hamas, and it is telling all the other terrorist groups in the world that it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile. It's good that they attack, they massacre Jews, Israelis, and others because they are going to be paid back politically. So why should they stop? It's a clear incentive to cause more deaths, more terror, more pain, and more chaos and destruction all over the world. It is a very, very bad idea. Now, even if you agree in principle with the idea that there should be a Palestinian state, let's say for the sake of the argument, this is not how it should be done, because you are rewarding the worst type of massacres that have happened to the Jewish people since the Holocaust, since the Second World War. But this is just not acceptable.
Mm-hmm. James, also, I think I want to chime in here as well. I mean, it wasn't just Spain, right? It was a coalition of countries that has been more loud, vocal about this in these last months, led by Pedro Sanchez. Whether he survives or not politically, that's a different question. But we have the likes of Belgium, Ireland, Malta, Slovenia, a shifting coalition, a shifting mood here. Is this going to last? What do you make of it, James?
I do believe that eventually there will be agreement that there should be a Palestinian state declared. But I do agree that it should be delayed because, yes, it would give sanction and it would give excuse for what Hamas did on October 7th. So I do think that it needs to wait. But it does need to be implemented as soon as possible. And Near East Observers, the group that I represent, has been advocating for a post-conflict plan that would involve a multinational force, as soon as the dust settles. Because my grave concern is for the Gazan people. The great fear is that when the conflict is over, Israel and the Arab world are going to enter into a long-term debate about who owns Gaza after the war. And the people of Gaza don't have 2 to 5 years to wait around for somebody to make a decision.
Right. I mean, a complex set of issues. And indeed, let's also remember that, nevertheless, if it's Spain, these are European countries, European Union being the biggest contributor to aid to the Palestinian Authority as well. So that's another issue, but we'll address that another time. We'll close it there. Thank you so much for both of you for that insight, James Bowden and Amir Whiteman. Appreciate it.
Thank you.